Something you realize the longer you do music is that the people that wind up making it the farthest are usually the ones that have the most generous spirit. Music is a generous spirit type of business. So if you're planning on working with other artists, some people will go about it like they need to make sure they secure, they are the songwriter, even if somebody else kind of contributed in some way, shape, or form. Whereas other people will be very generous with the fact that if you contributed anything, you're also a songwriter. And they won't be as concerned with what percentage did you contribute. Now, I watched a great interview of when Chad Blake and Mitchell Froome were answering a bunch of questions. And they basically said that, Chad, who started out as an engineer, never asked to get production credit, but Mitchell just gave it to him because it was the right thing to do. When Chad worked on certain things in that capacity, it was the right thing to do, so he just gave it to him. And Chad never asked. And now that's the type of thing I'm saying. Think about every band you've ever heard of. The ones that have the fighting, the infighting in the band that winds up ruining the band potentially, like Queen. It was often because who was getting the credit for what? Same thing with Smashing Pumpkins. Who was getting the credit for what? And as a result, the guys that decided, listen, we're going to split everything because even though I may have written the lyrics, the band is why this thing is special. And as a result, we should split it amongst the band members. The Chili Peppers actually do that. And that's a big reason why the Chili Peppers have been around as long as they have. All right. So other people who've done this kind of thing in the producing world, Steve Albini. Steve Albini was a generous spirit type of person. He didn't take royalties from Nirvana's, album they recorded with him. He decided, I want to be paid like a plumber. Just pay me for putting in the work, and then you guys keep the rest forever. I don't see a reason why I should get a percentage of this for your entire career. It just doesn't make sense to him. So everybody who comes at it from a point of view of music is a gift. We are all sort of just lucky to be able to harness music. And when things work out in music, it's always a long shot. It's never, we can plan this 100%. So many things have to go right for that to work. So the last thing you want is to have you sitting there being like, I got to keep all the royalties if it works. I got to make sure I screw over my bandmates. I got to make sure that I'm the one that's taken care of. Forget them. That's never going to work for you. It's never actually going to be your project that hits if you have that sort of vibe, energy, and the whole thing going into it, because people can smell that kind of thing. I have a good friend who, if I grab two beers from the fridge and I look at both and I go, which one do you want? He'll choose, and then I'll give him one. And he could tell by the look on my face whether I wanted that one or the other one, like the one I gave him or the other one that I didn't give him. And then he'll take the one that I didn't want, no, because he wants me to be happy in a way. So this kind of a thing, it's like people can smell it when you don't say that you're willing to do everything necessary to give them the credit they deserve. They could smell that sort of thing. And it makes you not someone that they think of in a positive light. So if I were you, I would always come at everything from the point of view of how can I be as fair as possible? How can I sit down and make sure that if anything good ever happens with this, everybody gets their due? Not I get the most and they get the least. How do I evenly split this amongst everybody? Because it keeps everybody happy, which is what you need, because you need them coming back to want to do more stuff or just continuing to work with you or to recommend you to someone else. That's always the way this kind of thing works. And you'd be surprised. You don't know who might not be anywhere today and then could be somewhere tomorrow. That's why every single thing you work on is your business card and is something that you need to be able to stand behind when you release it, because somebody could grab that 10 years from now, and that's the only way they know who you are. So depending on what you put on there is going to determine a lot. So that's why everything you release is very important in terms of the quality of it. Make sure that you're not putting out stuff that you just don't believe in or that you think is ridiculous. Like, you got to really put your effort to make sure it's as good as you can possibly make it. And also make sure you're as fair with everyone as possible. That means if somebody hands you something and you add to it, they should be willing to make you part of that project in some way. In other words, maybe you're the producer now, even though you were just hired to mix. You also did production. So you should look at them the same way that people should look at you when people do things. If you have somebody co-write a song, they're a co-writer. Nobody has to have this stuff in writing for you to give credit where credit is due. It is due where it's due because of what happened. You can't change what happened. So, as a result, never take credit for anything that you didn't do and always give credit willingly and overdo it. In other words, if somebody only wrote one verse, they're a co-writer on the song. It's not relevant that they wrote one verse there. If that song gets somewhere, it's arguable that that one verse that they wrote is a big reason for it. And if you sit there and try to be like, oh, well, it should be 75-25 because it's only one verse and there's three verses and there's a whatever, don't do that. That's what I'm saying. Every bit of time you waste doing that is ridiculous. I'm not saying you shouldn't go out of your way to copyright your stuff and protect yourself. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you're doing that not only for you, but for the benefit of everyone else that has worked on it. And it's up to people to be fair when they get paid. In other words, it's never right to take money that you didn't earn. So if you get paid something and someone else did something, you pay them out of what you got. And you keep good records, because if you do that, everything is always on the up and up. Everything is always in the right direction. You can always be counted upon, and that's what you need. This is the most tight-knit business there is, even though it often feels like we're swimming in a sea of people who all do the same thing. The higher up you get on the ladder, the more tight-knit it goes, and you have to develop these habits early on. No one just wakes up one day and decides they're now going to be a thief. They've been a thief their whole life, and they just follow down the same path forever because nobody ever smacked them upside the head and say, hey, you're going about this life all wrong, and you're in a business that relies so heavily on being a generous person. It's a giving business. When we give someone an emotion, when they hear a song, we're giving them a feeling. We're giving them an emotion. We're giving them the words that came to us to elicit an emotion. We're giving them the music that we thought of to make them feel something. It's a giving business. So give credit. Bring people in to help you when you want help. If you're slamming your head up against the wall because you can't think of, the song's too boring, it needs a bridge. Bring someone in who you know is a good composer to help you out and give them credit. And then maybe all of a sudden that's the thing that blows up. And now you found a formula that works for you going forward. I find it so rare that people bring in people to help because it takes a lot of courage to ask for help. A lot of people don't want to do it. You could spend your whole life trying to do things yourself and it might never work out. Whereas if you just asked for help, it might turn out very differently for you. And how would you know? What I'm saying is all that stuff that could be clouding your judgment, you want all the credit, you need all the money, you need all the royalties, all that stuff is only going to hurt you in the end. If you just get rid of all that as early as you can and you have this generous spirit, that's the spirit you need to make great music and to actually be looked at in a positive light where you'll keep getting hired. Okay? Take that with you for what it is, because it's a very important lesson. One that I wish I learned earlier, because being in my own band, writing my own songs, I feel like I should have kind of lumped everyone in early with, we're all getting an even split kind of a thing. I should have been more willing to maybe bring in some people I know who are great composers to help me out writing certain things, so just take advantage of my mistakes. And, it's never too late to change. I have absolutely changed up my entire philosophy on that. So I hope you guys dug it. Questions, comments, answers, throw it in there. I appreciate it. Like, subscribe. Evan Jaffe, Custom Cut Studios. You guys got this. Take it easy.